life, as we experience it, is this succession of moments that come and go over which we have absolutely zero control. It's been said very appropriately, time is the one resource that what? You can't get any more of. You can't get back. But it's even worse than that. It's not just the resource that you can't make any more of, it's also the resource that you have no idea how much of it you even have. It's like if you were handed a debit card and you're told, here, you can spend this on whatever you want. And then you ask, okay, now how much money's on it? We don't know. You just know at some point you're going to run out of money, and then you're dead. And that's what time is like for us. It's like these moments, and it's like, how many of them do you have? I don't know. Okay, that's a sobering thought, isn't it? Just one thing that you know this in your soul, but you forget it on a day-to-day basis because of the many distractions and frustrations that happen. You know this, though, don't you, church? You don't have tomorrow guaranteed, right? Okay, so what do you ought to do today? Maybe something different than what you might be inclined to do. Why? Because you might be inclined to just let the frustrations and the distractions and the disappointments just can totally consume you. And you know, when you think sober about it, you slow down for a second, you know that's not wise. Why? Because you know in your soul, you know deep, that you don't even know if you have tomorrow. You don't know how many days you have. You don't know how many moments you have. I don't know that. And you think, Brian, you're a young man. You probably have lots of moments. You don't know that. I don't know that. No one knows that. I don't know. What I know is that I have a certain amount of moments that will happen in succession in my life. And at some point, and I don't know when, those moments will end. And some of you, you're just like freaking out a little bit in your soul right now because you're a control freak. And you can't stand that you're living a life that you have no control over. And we have all these ways of thinking and having these illusions that we have control. You don't have any control. You draw breath right now. And you don't even know if you have the next one. And your heart continues to pump blood throughout your body, and you don't know that you have the next one. And so at all times, we are living with a certain amount of a resource that we don't know how much of it we have. And seen this way, time is the great tyrant under whose reign we live and that we can do nothing about. And this is what Kohelet deals with in chapter 3 and what he laments. And so the first 8 verses are this well-known kind of poem with these pairs of positive and negative. Starts this way: for everything there is a season, and a time for every matter under heaven. And then look at all these pairs: a time to be born and a time to die, a time to plant and a time to pluck up what is planted, a time to kill, a time to heal, a time to break down, a time to build up, a time to weep, a time to laugh, a time to mourn, a time to dance, a time to cast away stones and a time to gather stones together, a time to embrace, a time to refrain from embracing, a time to seek, a time to lose, a time to keep, a time to cast away, a time to tear, a time to sow, a time to keep silence, a time to speak, a time to love and a time to hate, a time for war and a time for peace. What gain has a worker from all of it? It's like all of these plus, minus, plus, minus, plus, minus, plus, minus. One commentator says you've got 14 positives and 14 negatives, and altogether they just add up to nothing at all. It's just life goes on. There's a time everything happens. Now, sometimes that's good news because you might be in a really bad season, and that's not permanent. There's a time for hurt and a time for not. Of course, you don't know which is which. You don't know which one you'll end with. But time marches on relentlessly, and the times come and go and come and go and come and go and come and go. And on any given day, there are babies being born and there are people dying. Some people, their time is just beginning, and some people, their time is coming to an end. And on any given day, there's a season where you plant crops, and then there's a season when you put the thing to bed and you pull them all up and you put your gardens to bed. Peace comes and goes at any given time. There are people who are reaching a time and season of peace, and there are people who are going to war. There's a time, says Kohelet, for killing, and there's a time for healing. There's a time for war, and there's a time for peace. And he's not even saying that these are equal things. He's just saying these things come and go, don't they? You look back through the years and decades and centuries, and you just find that the whole thing's just very cyclical. Which is why Kohelet can say there's nothing new under the sun. Things just start up and they die, and they come back around again. Material possessions come and go. There's a time for seeking, he says, and there's a time for losing. Right? You lose. Who's ever lost your wallet? And what do? You just search everywhere. Now, have any of you, honest question, have you ever just had to replace your wallet? And so what do you find there? It's not time to seek. I've been seeking for 3 weeks straight, can't find it. It's time to let that sucker go and just replace it. And I got to go down to the DMV, and I got to cancel the card, and I have to, no. There's a time for all these different things. There's a time for keeping. And some of you are like, it's always time for keeping. And there's a time for throwing away. And those of us that are ruthless are like, it's always time to throw away. I've thrown away entire boxes when we move without even looking at them. Yeah, that's right. That's right. If I haven't even opened a box for 3 years, it's obvious to me I don't need anything in it. Yeah, and some of you are just cringing right now. Like, how can you do that? Because I can't stand to waste the time looking in it. There's a time for all of it. Happiness comes and goes. There's a time to laugh, and there's a time to weep. And some of you don't know the difference. Have you ever found yourself laughing at a time you're definitely not supposed to laugh? One of my best friend's wedding. I'm standing up. I'm one of the groomsmen. I'm standing up there. And the guy behind me, he's standing like this. And he's just moving his hand. And he's like touching me. And I'm standing there. And I'm like, stop it. And it starts making me chuckle. And then the thought enters my mind, Brian, this is not a time to laugh. And that makes it worse. And so now you're just losing it, and you're just trying everything you can. Your knuckles in your mind are white with the grip, and you're just holding on, trying not to absolutely lose it. There's a time for laughter, and there's a time for not. There's a time for mourning, and a time for dancing. Kohelet says, relationships, they come and go. There's a time for speaking, and there's a time to keep your mouth shut. And again, sometimes some of us don't well know the difference. There's a time for embracing and a time for distancing. Now, Kohelet there, the consensus there is he's talking about intimacy. But the point of all of this is that time just relentlessly marches on and on and on, and nothing lasts. and everything is destined for change, how many of you dislike change? Just as a general note, you just don't like change at all. Well, I'm sorry, but there's life, baby. Everything's destined to change. The seasons will change. Your body will change. Your mental capacities will change. Your life circumstances will change. Your relationships will change. Your job will change. Your kids will grow up. Life will change. There's a time for everything, and it just marches on and on and on and on.